right, I'm going to have you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about what you do.
My name is Natja Soave. I am a photographer by trade. I like fine art, so I work for other people as an assistant in art in general. I work with art departments and I work with other photographers and I work with small productions around town, all basically so I can fund my own artwork.
Which is really amazing, by the way. And like, I don't know, I don't see it out and about enough. I'm just saying. When is that going to
Nobody
happen?
does. Well, there's a few things in the works actually. A lot of the stuff I do is very personal, so I don't necessarily offer it up to everybody all the time.
Yeah.
I am working on a project right now that is called, what are we calling it? It's very, very early on in the process, so we're still working on like the details of it. But it's something along the lines of Southern comfort and Southern discomfort,
Okay.
which is, it's in theory, if it works, is going to be a story of a friend of mine from the time that her family was enslaved and brought to this country until now, and where they are, ideally threaded through the women in her family, although that might be kind of
Yes.
hard because her father is a fantastic storyteller and was a freedom rider and marched on Bloody Sunday, and like he's got this like phenomenal history. They all lived just outside, like a couple miles away from Selma. So everything was very close to home. Um, his mother was very involved. They were very involved with the church, but his mother was very involved also with the Freedom Riders and kind of organizing all of them. She was of the older group, right? So she did all the organization, the paperwork, got everybody together, made sure they had all the things they needed, and then sent out the young kids to go do the protests because, you know,
Wow. Yeah.
we all have a place. So
That is an amazing project. That's gonna, oh wow. I can't wait to see how that shapes up.
it's literally going to take another couple of years. COVID
Yeah.
has really put a hamper on a lot of things, and so we're, traveling to Alabama, which is where the family starts, is not necessarily safe currently.
Right.
And I myself have an autoimmune disorder, so traveling during COVID times is not really safe for me.
Mhm.
So I mean, that's part of it is cool because it gives me all this time to like learn how to write grants and like learn, figure out what I want this to look like and figure out, because like this all comes down to me wanting to make a book, but I understand that if I want to share something like this as widely as possible, it has to be more of a multimedia piece. And so the book is kind of one of the byproducts of the different parts that we're creating. And we just set up a Patreon account, but it's not actually up and running all the way yet. So
Okay.
as soon as that is, I'll let you know.
Yeah, let me know.
And yeah. And we'll offer like postcards and like prints and stuff, just all kind of things that will finance the
Yeah.
ultimate project,
Awesome.
So yeah, this has been a major undertaking and learning experience for sure. But it's very cool.
Yeah.
I decided when COVID happened and kind of the world went haywire that I really just wanted to work on projects that made me feel whole as a human being.
Yeah.
Because I so standardly work on like local commercials and stuff like that, you know what I mean? And like lifestyle photography and like, it's all marketing in some way,
Yeah.
shape, or form. And it pays,
Yeah.
I
Shiny
mean, it's
stuff that
good.
pays the bills.
Shiny stuff that pays the bills is great, but it's just not really where I want to put my energy anymore. I want to put my energy into things that are important, that are at least
Yeah.
important to me,
Yeah.
and hopefully important to other people as well.
Well, I've noticed that with like your personal work, it's always like on a more personal and connecting level. I feel like you've done this like I I don't know a lot about your work, but from what I've seen, like there's this whole portraiture series that you're doing, and it's like raw in a certain way, but it's like it's raw in a certain way that a lot of photographers aren't. Like I feel like I've been in front of a lot of lenses, and most of the time I feel fairly uncomfortable. And what I'm seeing behind your lens is like you actually give a shit about the people on the other side. Um,
Absolutely.
they're not just subjects. It's like there's like a certain kind of intimacy, like with the closeness of the lens too, where it's not like sometimes I feel like it's this strange kind of scrutiny, or just like maybe not even scrutiny, but like I think that's kind of what I mean. It's just something uncomfortable that I can't ever quite pinpoint. Like I've actually blanched in front of some people's lenses before because it just felt like
Unnatural.
consuming and unnatural. Yeah. But I like the pictures I've seen, it's like, you know, yeah, like you'll be right up on someone's like scars and freckles, but it's still like really beautiful. You can tell there's a lot of love there. And I was
Well,
wondering if you could talk about
that project, yeah, sure.
that.
um,
Yeah.
that project is really about seeing people.
Hmm.
I feel like there's a distance that we've kind of created. Before everybody went to Zoom meetings, we were already kind of creating this separation with each other, and
Right.
we've already kind of started creating these technological barriers almost. Like social media is really a barrier. As much as it connects us all and gives us all an opportunity to see the world, it also separates us from the world, and it also pulls us away, and it makes it very easy for us to revert back to our lizard brain, and children. I used to make the joke that children are just little Nazis, uh,
Mm.
because, like, I'm a smoker. I've been a smoker forever, right? This is a perfect example. If a little kid, when I started smoking, would have seen me smoking, wouldn't have thought twice about it. Now, a little kid sees me smoking. All they know is that nobody in their family smokes. They've heard all these terrible things about smoking. They know all this stuff. And
Yeah.
instead of being like, oh, a human being doing what a human being does, and maybe I'll just mind my own, they don't care. Kids
Right.
don't have any filter in that way. So they'll come up and tell me how disgusting this habit is, and how, you know what I
Ooh.
mean? And like, and they just, that's just how their brains work. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like, they
They're
don't
just very matter of
have,
fact.
they're very matter of fact, and everything is still very black and white. Those gray areas in the world and in emotion and in humans hasn't really formed yet,
Right.
and it can't. I mean, they're too young. Like, you haven't experienced enough to actually have like reasonable opinions.
Right.
um so it's I think that this project kind of pulls us out of that, like, lizard brain mentality that we kind of are able to fall back into when we're on social media, and we're able
Hmm.
to like attack each other with some form of anonymity. um so the project itself is kind of giving you an opportunity to look at somebody for real. Like, you, when you're walking around in the world, won't necessarily make eye contact with people, won't necessarily make those connections, because either you're lost in your own head, or you're nervous or anxious, or people don't connect like that very much anymore. And I feel like because of it, we don't look at each other. And when we don't look at each other, we don't empathize. And when we don't empathize, we lose our humanity.
Yeah.
And that's kind of a miserable reality of that.
That is.
Um,
Yeah.
so these portraits that I've been doing are um, really personal. It's me and that particular person. We spend an hour sitting in a dark room together, and we just talk. We just talk about whatever they want to talk about, and sometimes it's their jobs, and sometimes it's their lives, and You know, sometimes it's the art that they've been making, or sometimes it's their life is falling apart and they're just telling me
Mhm.
about whatever. Um, you know, but really, I've always been kind of fascinated with exploitation photography. And I have this kind of love-hate relationship with it. Like, I love
Yeah.
that it exists because we need to know what that looks like. But I
Mhm.
hate that that exists because we've torn out people's souls to create it.
Right.
And so I would like to create almost the antithesis of that. I'd like to create something that's not exploitative, but in fact gives you an opportunity to really reach inside and give yourself that moment to really look at somebody who you may not have ever seen, have ever encountered. You know, I mean, the real point of that project is to make it as diverse as I can possibly make it,
Mhm.
um, because everybody needs to see something different.
Yeah.
You know, we all do. So, and I am in a unique position where I have access to an incredibly diverse group of people. You know, so I reach out to those people. You
Yeah.
know,
Well, I feel like, I mean, I feel like you surround yourself with those kinds of people, and I'm assuming there are certain kinds of people that you can't stand so much, like, people who are a little limited in their thinking sometimes, like,
yeah,
um,
absolutely.
and I don't know, that's something I really appreciate a whole lot, because I think
Thank
a
you.
lot of us become very, you know, we fit ourselves into a tunnel and just like, this is life, this is the whole of life, and it isn't.
It's not. There's a lot going on in the world that that doesn't involve us at all, but that if we don't know about, we won't ever be empathetic to it. We won't ever
Right.
fully understand it, you know? And misunderstandings and lack of knowledge create fear. And then we have what we have now.
So I actually have a question,
Yeah,
because I know you have experience with like journalism too, like journalistic photography a tiny
little
bit,
bit. Yeah,
or at least
tiny
you
bit,
studied it. And
a
so
little
like
bit.
I'm just curious about what are some of the like kind of, I guess, tactics you use with this fascination for exploitative photography, but making it very personal and bringing out the humanity in it. So we're not just looking at subjects. Like, for some reason in my mind, I keep thinking of the Depression era photos, and I can't remember the photographer's name, but they just traveled across the United States
There
during the
were a
Civil
bunch
War and
of
everything.
them. There were a bunch of
Okay.
them. But the most famous image that you're probably seeing in your head right now is the pea field mother.
Yep.
And that was Georgia O'Keeffe.
Yeah. And it's
Yeah,
just like, and it's like so harrowing and so sad, and like the humanity is still there, and the mother and her kid, I think they're still subjects, right? I feel
right.
like they're still subjects in that picture. Like, we're
Well,
apart from this experience. We're not part of it.
exactly. Well, and and a lot of those photos, you're going to end up getting that feeling from naturally because those photographers didn't have time. You
Okay.
know what I mean? Like you
It's like
don't have an
documentation.
opportunity necessarily always to get to know your subjects and
Hmm.
to make them feel comfortable. You know, when she started shooting that shot, she started from like 40 feet back. There's like
Wow.
a series of photographs of her getting closer, because it was an exploitative image. It
Hmm.
actually totally is an exploitative image.
Hmm.
This is a family whose car broke down. The husband went to go find help, and the family was sitting there waiting for him to get back, you know?
Yeah.
And she never really spoke to them, even though
Yeah.
she got right up on them. She never really, you know what I mean? She didn't necessarily have the opportunity to do that. She also had to fight a lot to be able to do the work that she was doing during that time because that kind of photography and the people who were getting those jobs were all men,
Hmm.
and so they gave her a tremendous amount of hell for the whole thing, and she just persevered and kept going and was like, I got this. And she did a great job, and those photos ended up internationally famous, you know, a
Yeah.
lot of them. But again, they're still super exploitative. There's
Mhm.
still a removal between the photographer and the subject.
Right.
There's a woman, Diane Arbus. Diane Arbus is, in theory, one of my favorite photographers. I don't necessarily love all of her work, but I super love her mentality. And I
Mhm.
really enjoy the fact that she just did what she needed to. She would walk up to random strangers and be like, "Can I go home with you?"
Oh, wow.
And sometimes they said yes. And then she'd go home with them and she'd photograph them the whole time. So while she's getting to know them, they're getting to know her with her camera, so essentially it's becoming just a part of her.
Yeah.
And she got some really beautiful, really personal imagery because of it. Because she made friends with random strangers and with, freaks and weirdos, like she decided that she wanted to give these people voices who didn't necessarily have them before.
Right.
And she deemed herself qualified to do that. Uh, I, uh, I think probably the way that all of us do, as artists, we all kind of fall into that freaks and weirdos category. Um, and she really just kind of drove that home as like her purpose, was making personal work, creating a catalog of images that made her feel better and more of a whole person, because
Yeah.
ultimately everything that we do is all therapy, right? Like this is all,
Yeah.
nobody,
That's what we learn after a while.
the people who make art for a living and like
Mhm.
that's all they do, they're not the same as us. Those are business owners. I have to make art whether I'm making money on it or not.
Same.
I have
Yeah.
to create things whether there's financing for it or not. And sometimes that's a much smaller image of what that really looks like,
Right.
because I don't have the money to make a giant project,
Right.
or sometimes I do have the money to make a giant project, and then it's all about, well, where do I store this thing once I've created it?
I hear this a lot from all different kinds of artists, like
I have no
where,
doubt. And
yeah.
with this, I mean, those portraits that you're talking about, none of them have gone to print yet. I want to create 100 different images. I want to use 100 different people, 100 different kinds of people.
Mhm.
And when I print them, I want them to be printed really large. And I have like this whole idea in my head of how I want to present them, but those are massive pieces,
Yeah.
and creating pieces that are big enough because they're portraits, right? So they have to be at least look like a human head.
Right.
You have to at least be looking at like something reasonable to you. And I would like to make them a little larger than that so that it's kind of almost all consuming
Yeah.
when you're looking at them, so that you can't just like look at this 8x10 and then see the wall around it. Like I want it to be big enough that like you have to really, it reaches your peripheral
Yeah.
vision, so that
Instead
it
of
is all
entering
consuming.
the image, you are well, the converse of that. It was in my head how
Right.
to say it before. It's just like, yeah, you are in the picture. Um, that's really neat.
Because I want you to
Um,
sit in front of somebody different,
yeah,
and you may not ever, depending on who you are, have the opportunity to do that in any other scenario.
right.
You know, there's a lot of white people in Longmont, never seen anything but white people.
Mm.
These are
um,
just facts.
I know there are so many places I think I want to move sometimes, like mountain towns and stuff. I'm like, oh, wouldn't that be great? And then I'm like, probably
Yeah.
not.
Depends. It depends where you go. There are pockets
Depends.
that are safe and
Yeah.
awesome, but
Tell me where these
uh
pockets are, because I need to be my queer brown self.
yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Then maybe go on a hike. But what else? Like we're getting definitely a pretty strong feel for what your kind of impetus is and your I don't know, like you seem to have a very clear um way of going about your art. Like, is
Cool.
that crazy talk?
I'm yeah, I'm glad it seems that way. Well, I mean, again, it's all super personal, right? So it's
Yeah.
all, I mean, it's all going to tie back in some way, shape, or form because it's all me,
Yeah.
you know. And so it's, you know, it's all therapy. You know, when I'm dealing with, I naturally have depression that I have kind of had my whole life, and I've kind of had to deal with my whole life, and I have found a lot of ways of dealing with that. One of those ways is just purging uh, my distress and my angst, you know, uh, like seemingly you'll see an image of mine. Well, like, okay, like my Instagram account.
Hmm.
Seemingly you'll see an image on that account, and you'll see a quote that goes with it that might not necessarily make sense as a unified piece.
Hmm.
Um, but both of those
Yeah.
things reflect a different part of what's going on at that moment in my head, you know. So it might seem calm and very clean, and I like really clean lines, and I like symmetry,
Yeah.
um, which is what a lot of my architectural photography is. But the quote that I've chosen to put with it will be a bit more chaotic, and that'll be, you know, reflect more of like whatever's internal, you know.
Yeah.
So it's like it's always kind of a, you know, sometimes I look like a hot mess, but I've got it all together actually, and sometimes it's, you know, I look like I've got it all together and I'm actually like falling apart. And so depending on the thing that I'm working on is kind of depending on how I pull those different emotions.
Mhm.
So I mean, but ultimately, like, I don't know how to not shoot, you
Yeah.
know, like more than anything else, I don't know how to not shoot. So the amount of work that I have is kind of insane.
Well,
The amount
what
of
was
stuff.
what was the photographer you directed me to the other day? Like, she lives on a ranch, is shooting all the time, and
Sally
like
Mann.
Sally Mann, and
Sally
she's the
Mann.
one. She just had the talk that we watched, and like
Yeah,
how
yeah.
like she was showing these beautiful images and talking about how they were full of mistakes. And I remember I texted you, I'm like, what the hell is she talking about? Like, these images are gorgeous. And so, like, I don't know, it just reminds me of that, because that's her mentality, is like, you don't need to show people you're doing the work all the time. You just need to do the work all the time.
Yeah, you don't need to prove you're an artist. You just need to be an artist.
Yeah, you just do it.
Yeah.
Like,
Like, I don't have to prove to you that I make art. I just have to
right.
make art. That's all I have to do.
And
You know,
that's
that's my job.
Yeah. And I've been haunted with that ever since, because social media has been such a big part of my life for a while. And I also have been reading on some Cal Newport too, about like you know getting back into those realms of focus we need for creativity, for example. Like, I'm a writer and stuff. So
Right.
like, I need those spaces of, that are like, oh, there it is, there's the juice, and
Mm-hmm.
then the time
Mm-hmm.
to be able to put it down. And then of course social media is like breaking it all into little bits, and parsing out our ability to focus and have enough willpower for whatever, into like just particles.
Yeah,
um
totally.
and so
Totally.
I think about that. I feel like I am thinking about and creating art all the time. And I just wonder, like, what does that look like? What does that look like without all of the social medias all the time? Because you're not on
I
social
mean,
media a lot. You're on there a little bit.
no. I mean, I'm on there way more than it looks like I am. I spend way
Ah.
too much time on social media. I can't tell you how many times a day I make a comment and delete it,
Mhm.
because I'm like, you know what? Not going to pick that scab right now. Not bad for my headspace, you know?
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of that happens.
Mhm.
I, I have been an activist most of my life. Um, in a lot of various forms. That's taken a lot of forms over the years, because I went from being very young and only understanding how to write letters to the president,
Mhm.
and marching, and then going to a point where like I understood marching, I understood rioting, I understood being able to get between the cops and the rioters and get those photos. I understood how to soothe both sides so that I could just stand there for a couple minutes.
Yeah.
And then once I left, it's not my problem anymore. It's other people's issues. Like
Yeah.
I can't control the whole scenario. All I can do is tell the story from where I'm at. But I am biased. I am an activist. I can't do, this is why I didn't end up getting into journalism ultimately.
Yeah.
Um,
Nice.
I feel like to be really good at it,
Yeah.
you have to really not care if you're exploitative. You
Right.
know, you have to, that has to be
Yep.
a secondary thought. And I don't ever want that to be a secondary thought for me. And part of that is, you know, because I've been an activist my entire life, because, you know, my whole life it's in some way, shape, or form has revolved around like trying to give a voice or trying to stand up for someone or people or whatever who didn't have the same capabilities as I did, you
Right.
know, and don't necessarily have the voice that I do, you know. You know, it's weird right now. It's weird. I saw it on a meme, and I know as soon as I say I didn't, I'm gonna feel like I'm gonna feel like a jerk because I stole it. But the reality is, I saw it on a meme, and it rings super true. Which is that we live in a world right now where a bunch of white people just woke up and realized racism exists,
Right.
um, which is super crazy. Um,
Good job, guys.
yeah, right. Way to go! Glad you missed that for the last 400 years.
Right.
Um, uh, so I mean, it's kind of, and where people are realizing like America didn't start slavery. Like slavery's been around for thousands. As long as humans have been able to oppress other humans, we've been
Yeah.
doing it.
Yeah.
You know, we've been doing it. There's always been a pecking order in human beings. It's the same as in any other creature in nature. We are not different. We are just natural beasts. You know, we have a brain that has made us believe that we are bigger, better, badder, broader. No, we are more destructive. That's what we are. And we are smart enough to continue to be more destructive, you
And
know.
smart enough to choose too. That's the other thing. It's like, I mean, that's tricky because like what we're I think a lot of what we're seeing is like, you know, you're talking a little bit about the lizard brain, the limbic brain,
Yeah.
and we're seeing that people live there a lot. It doesn't matter what economical class or what background, the limbic brain often rules, which is really frightening, right? Because it's all
Yeah.
about like, I need to eat now, I need to fuck now, I need to like secure my power and
It's
authority and
filling those. Yeah.
yeah, like all these things, like and it prohibits us from seeing a bigger picture. And so like I worry about that um a lot, uh because we also are smart enough to choose. Like we're smart enough to like understand what's happening with our limbic tendencies and like to be like, oh yeah, but if we do it this way, like if I avoid Monsanto products in my garden, you know, those the seeds, the heirloom seeds and stuff that are in my garden are going to be stronger, and honestly they're more beautiful, and they're just like, they, you know, they taste better, like those kinds of things, but also just I don't know, more diversity in the plant life that we're, you know, just like kind of a simple example. Or like, you know, instead of being afraid of each other, there are things we can learn from each other, right? Like one of
Right.
my classes, the bulk of my students, well, 3 out of 4 of my classes, I feel like the bulk of my students have points of views that are so different than mine.
Right.
And I suspect at sometimes this is going to be very challenging because we come from different places. And at the same time, though, everyone is willing to learn and, you know, not necessarily change, because I think what happens is like the more you learn, sometimes you go harder back into the thing you were before.
Sometimes, yeah. Well,
But
people get defensive.
yeah, but it's
Like
like,
our natural response is like,
right. But there we can find ways to coexist or even collaborate, because I truly believe like all of these point of views are important. I always feel a little like I'm talking a little in a little tricky spot, but um, I like to try to be as open as possible, um, and
well, and
figure
educational
out.
situations are kind of fascinating because
Yeah.
you do get a group of people together. I know one of the schools you work at, and you do get a really eclectic group of people. You get a group of people from, most walks of life there. You get,
Yeah.
very wealthy, like kids who just stepped out of high school who are like
Yep.
ready to like, okay, I guess I'll do this now, and then you get like, people like me who, show up in their late 30s, early 40s, and they're like, you know what, I'm just going to finish my degree.
Yeah.
I'm just going to do this, or they go through their midlife crisis and that looks like a new education instead of a new car,
Right. Right.
like that's, so it's kind of an interesting way of getting people together who come from completely different places and from completely different philosophies, and giving them an opportunity to work together to really foster more of a welcoming atmosphere, more of an accepting atmosphere. Yeah, you might be, somebody who's very, very pro police, and I might be very, very anti police, and
Mhm.
but we're in class now and we're working on a paper and we're discussing this theory. And while we're working together, because naturally, as it goes, while you're working with somebody, you start learning about them, you start talking to
Yeah.
them, you start bonding with them over certain things, and then those other differences that seem so incredibly polarizing aren't necessarily,
Right.
sometimes they actually do come a little bit closer. Um and you don't really get that in a lot of other scenarios. We are
Right.
taught, you're taught at a young age, don't talk about religion, don't talk about politics.
Yeah.
Those are your two things, and like I've never fully grasped why, because I understand that, yeah, I'm going to piss you off, and yeah, you're going to piss me off, but that's how we do, that's how we learn, that's how we get beyond whatever. We might piss each other off, but now we have to go home and sit with these thoughts.
Mhm.
And now we have to really focus on like, well, why did this person say this to me? And
Mhm.
why did I feel this way about it? Why did I internalize this? Why, so it becomes more less polarizing and more, about figuring out who you are, and I think college in particular is very welcoming for that kind of
Yeah.
movement in people,
I
you
feel like
know
a lot of colleges are. Some are very like streamlined in a certain way, which I'm
well,
learning. Um, which is like it's it's fascinating. It's really fascinating. Like just being on different sides of the desk, and different institutions, and just being like, okay, this is how this community works, right? And not every community this is the same. And then too, just thinking about how like things are changing, like our college is going to be here in 10 years. um, you know.
I mean, yes, yes. I mean, it's like okay. So I told you I watched your talk with Mari, right? Mari, am I
Yeah.
saying her name right? Is it
Sorry,
Mari?
Mari.
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 Okay.
Yeah.
I watched your talk with her, and one of the things that you guys kind of touched on was books, you know, and literature, and how publication may or may not exist and what forms that takes, but writing never really goes away, even if it's just writing, you know, online or in a blog or whatever. That writing never stops. That form of communication never stops.
Right.
And I think education is the same thing. Education's never going to really stop. It's just going to take different forms, you know. And now with this, oh my God, we just discovered we don't have to all sit in cubicles all day long every day to do our jobs.
Right.
You know, like handicapped people for all this time could have had great jobs, and they just have been pushed out of these different situations because people didn't want to make that kind of accommodation.
Right.
You know, and it's like, you know, so I feel like, you know, I feel like those aspects of us are not going to change. I think that we are learning creatures, you know what I mean? And, you know, my childhood best friend, always loved nature, always was into it, right? Always, we hiked, we camped, we traveled around the country together, we did all this stuff. She grew up and just last year before, graduated with her doctorate in, oh, I'm going to screw this up. Basically trees. She got a doctorate in trees. She goes into areas after they've burned and she studies the fresh growth, right? She's always had a scientific mind. She's always loved nature. She's all, you know what I mean? This has always been a part of her, the way that taking photos has always been a part of me, you know? And so I don't think that you can quell that, you know what I mean? I think you can only, you know, move people around and get them into situations where they can really cultivate these things, you know? I also find it really interesting that we've discovered that we don't need like an 8-hour school day. We only need like 3 hours, actually.
Right. Like, what is all this?
Yeah, you know, it's an interesting, you know, it's an interesting facade that we've created as a society.
Yeah, definitely old paradigm shit. They don't work. I want to get back to your work a little bit, if possible.
Okay.
And
yeah,
like,
whatever.
like what are I don't even know what to ask. Are you working right now?
I'm not working right now. I've gone full-blown domestic, which has been very strange. And while I always kind of suspected I'd be really good at it because I have all the skills, turns out not really great at it, even though I have all the skills. So I'm kind of trying to learn what that means. I'm used to not having time to clean my house, as opposed to realizing I didn't clean those baseboards quite enough, which is a different part of my brain.
I wonder if I'll ever get to that point. I'm so bad.
You know, I always blame it on my mother, right? My mother was German. She was a house cleaner for a lot of years. Yeah. One of the things that she would put in her newspaper ads was German housekeeper, because there was this conception that Germans were exceptionally clean people. And she was not an exception to that rule. She was a, you know, bleach the baseboards kind of girl. She would sweep the porch, and like, it was that kind of thing. So I have a lot of this weird neuroses in the back of my head that she instilled in me, which has made me a really difficult roommate.
I'm the other difficult roommate. I try to keep the mess in my room, but yeah, now I just live by myself, and now I'm no one.
Now you can do whatever. The whole thing is your room. Yeah, and I've spent a lot of time with the garden.
Nice. It sounds like it's doing really well.
It is doing really well. I kind of wish I had taken this call on my phone, because then I could actually show you what's going on over there. but yeah, I mean, I've been really focusing on that, and I've been making a lot of I've been kind of going back to nature as much as I can at this point. Like, I feel like when all of this came down the pipeline, I already had a jump start on what everybody was going to start going through.
Yeah.
Because I have always known that having a garden is a truly revolutionary act. I have
Yeah.
always
I really.
known that feeding people is a really revolutionary act.
Mhm.
Um, and so those things are things that I've always kind of tried to carry with me. And you'll see more as as my stuff kind of pops up here and there, you end up seeing more of like my garden, and photographing of like the flowers. And I've it's really cool. I've been working really hard at creating an ecosystem,
Nice.
so it's not just the garden.
Yeah.
Like we started the garden, and we had hornets, like lots of
Yeah.
hornets. And my neighbor on one side of me sprays every year, and I don't like that. Like, I understand, because hornets are gnarly beasts and you don't
Yeah.
want them around, and they're super territorial. And honestly, I don't want to pick vegetables out of my garden when I've got to fight 50 hornets off of a tomato. It
Real
sucks.
talk. Yeah.
Yeah. So like, I didn't argue with him. And like, I've never talked to him about it. Instead, what I did was I set up bird feeders. The finches, the local finches, the little brown finches that everybody has everywhere all over the country,
Yeah.
eat hornets. They also eat grasshoppers.
Ooh.
And so by setting up bird feeders, see if I can get kind of an image going here.
Oh.
So by
Mhm.
setting up bird feeders, and my sunflowers are crazy. There's let's see
Oh,
where can
there's
we see?
some hummingbirds. Are there some birds out there? Yeah.
Those are the finches.
Oh, okay.
There it is. So these are all the little brown finches are all around it right now.
Nice.
Turns out they love the sunflowers because they work as a perch. So they sit on the sunflowers and wait their
Yeah.
turn to eat at the feeder. But it's cut down our hornets so much that he hasn't had to spray at all.
That's
Um,
awesome.
so we don't have, like, there are some, obviously, because I have flowers. I attract all kinds of things that pollinate.
Yeah.
That's the goal, right? You want bees, and you want whatever. With the amount of honeybees I've been getting around here, I'm starting to think there might be somebody might have some honeybees somewhere near. Um, and so I've been kind of getting as many pollinators in as I can so that we can get the bees up and we can get everything going.
Hmm.
We've cultivated the birds, which has also, because the garden has brought the squirrels, I've also started setting up an area for the squirrels to eat at, because if I keep them fed, they won't eat stuff out of my garden.
Right.
So I've got a spot for them on one side of the backyard, and then a spot for everything else on the other side. But then my neighbor came out of his house couple months ago or something, and we were standing on the front porch, and he was like, Natja, oh my God, the most amazing thing. And I was like, oh my God, what happened? Um, Apparently, a red-tailed hawk had caught a bird and was eating it, sitting on his fence, just
Yeah.
eating this bird.
Yeah.
And he's like, I haven't seen hawks in this area in a decade, and I was like, cool. So I've brought hawks, which are part of this natural area.
Yeah.
And so I've kind of worked on just creating like a full life cycle here.
Mhm.
We have predators, we have pollinators, we have, all the things now. And just kind of trying to kind of maintain that has been really interesting, and, really super fulfilling,
Nice.
because I also live in a construction zone. I live one house away from the I-70 project.
Mm.
So I'm 20 feet away from constant
Dang.
construction that will
Yeah.
be going on for another 4 or 5 years.
Yeah.
And so part of my desire to do this was to counteract some of that, because with that, they're scaring
Tough to
away so
ease.
much.
Yeah.
Yeah. They're
my old
scaring everything
neighborhood,
away.
my old neighborhood, it was like 3 years, 4 years of the constant drone of construction. And I was working at home. I had to listen to drones all the time because that's the only
Mhm.
thing that'll tie all that noise together because you feel it physiologically on, like my
Oh yeah.
body was shaking. And I
Mhm.
remember like walking like 10, 12 blocks away from my old neighborhood and being like, there are birds. And like there weren't birds in
Yeah.
the neighborhood anymore. They were all gone. And the raccoons were gone. The wild cats, I don't care what anyone says. I loved the wild cats, the feral
Hmm.
cats, because they were part of the neighborhood. And like everything, all of those things were going away, and it just felt sterile in a certain way, and also
Hmm.
just like this weird limbo feeling. It
I
didn't
always feel like those areas are super depleted of soul.
Mhm.
Like everything that
like
makes them cool is just gone.
yeah, the kids were gone. There weren't kids anymore.
Yeah.
Uh, that particular neighborhood, all of a sudden, there were lots of dogs in sweaters. So
Yeah.
I'm like, especially around Halloween, I've never seen so many dressed up dogs in my life. No kids, but lots of dressed up dogs. And I was just like, I don't want to live here anymore. I feel miserable. So I
I'm really
definitely,
excited about like the neighborhood that I live in because we're the last to go gentrified. You
wow,
know,
yeah,
nobody wants to gentrify this area. Like rich
good.
people don't want to live this close to a train. They don't want to live this close to a highway. They don't see the value of it, right?
Yeah.
But this neighborhood is an old immigrant neighborhood.
Mhm.
So most of these people are immigrants, whether it be, like one neighbor on one side of me is like he's like the fifth generation, fourth generation in that house back from when it was a Polish neighborhood,
Yeah,
and now it's a primarily Mexican neighborhood. And all that actually means is kids play outside.
yeah,
Neighbors know each other.
yeah.
Like there isn't so much money that we can hold up in our houses forever. We
Mm.
actually have to get to know each other and spend
Yeah,
time together. Um, and that makes for a real live community.
yeah,
The over gentrification kills that, just
yep.
destroys it, like nobody knows each other, nobody wants to know each other, nobody cares, or if they do, they think
Yeah.
everybody else is weird and out to get them. And there's this whole,
Right.
like I know my neighbors on both sides, both crazy old men. I love them both. They're amazing. I've got Pancho and his wife on one side who are wonderful, and they own the property on the other side of their house too, and he's just got a lawn. It's just a lawn. He's been retired forever. That's what he does. He just hangs out and works on his lawn, keeps his area clean, rebuilds this. He's built a wall to separate our property from his, and it's
Yeah.
given him like this outdoor room in the back of his house. That's amazing. You know what I mean? And like that's what his life is. It consists of like, making his little area of the world amazing in the best way he knows how. And then I've got my other crazy neighbor on the other side who like has some health issues and has some weird political views considering who he is. And generally speaking, is just like he's just the old guy in the neighborhood that everybody knows and we all
Yeah.
kind of look out for. And like, I've got the neighbor across the alley who him and I stay in communication about this guy to make sure that he's okay. And he's got like groceries and he can get to his appointments and he can do this kind of stuff, like it's the kind of community that we've been able to create, because we go outside,
Yeah.
because over gentrification hasn't happened here yet and there is no money here yet.
Yeah.
Like people you can't afford to buy a house here. It's not like, I mean, it's not like special, Denver's still unaffordable.
Right.
But most of the people who live here have lived here for so long they don't have to think about that.
Yeah.
Their grandparents bought this house and it's been passed through their family now, and all they have to worry about is the property taxes,
Nice.
which
Wow.
may or may not be an issue depending on that scenario, but that's a whole other part of the conversation, right?
Right.
um so like bringing that back around to my work, it's a lot of the stuff that I've been doing more recently has revolved around spending just time in my neighborhood, spending time. I did a full series of 4th of July shots
Mm.
because in my neighborhood, everybody gets illegal fireworks. And so we have real fireworks going on like
Oh my.
crazy. And it's you know, people are adverse to fireworks. People love them. There's a whole controversy that goes on with them. However, I love them. I think they're amazing. I think they're really beautiful. And so I spent 4th of July night walking around my neighborhood with a mask on till like 2 or 3 in the morning, just taking pictures of my neighbors,
That's cool.
like firing off whatever, and like, and because the neighborhood is the way it is, we kind of always have a police presence, mostly I think because of the construction. Because during construction they use the cops a lot to block off roads and to slow
Oh.
traffic or whatever,
Hmm.
to make sure, like currently, we've got a cop planted at the end of our street because they just opened our street back up, so it goes all the way through now, but it's a one-way street headed north. And when it wasn't a one-way street, everybody was going left on it because we had it shut off, so it was safe
Hmm.
to do it. And it
Hmm.
wasn't a big deal. People could park on both sides of the street. It was blocked off. The kids were playing all over the place. It was great. But then they opened it again. And now we've got all these idiots going the wrong way down a one-way street. 10 a day. I'm not even kidding. But now we finally have a cop planted back there who can start catching people, and they'll start, realizing that this is a one-way street again, and start,
Yeah.
hoping that maintains some form of peaceful ticketing, as opposed to, like,
Right.
what
The
it could
other.
turn into.
Yeah.
Um, but also, because of the construction, the police tend to, at least in this area, tend to kind of realize what's going on. Like on 4th of July, everybody's out, illegal fireworks everywhere. Um, we had a couple cops roll through. Uh, there was an actual shooting that night in my neighborhood. Um, they didn't do anything to anybody. They didn't ticket anybody. They just went after the shooting. I don't know what the outcome of that was. I do know it was an actual shooting. Um, and I do, like, all of my neighbors, the cops came through, and all of the neighbors, because we were all outside, were like, oh, what's going on? Like, this was, they're sirening and running around instead of just, like, slowing down traffic so that people can still stand in the middle of the street. Um, so yeah, I mean, it seems to be, um, during certain scenarios, um, kind of reasonable around here, you know. But I do also know that somewhere around here, all those evil SWAT vans that they have, that they put like 40 guys on and throw in the middle of downtown, those
Yeah.
live around here somewhere too, because they quietly pull them out of somewhere. I don't even know where, but I'll see them
Oh wow.
going down 47th. I'll see them, like, going off to whatever protest they're going to. So I know that, like, I think it might partially be, keeping the neighborhood quiet,
Yeah.
so that you don't draw attention to that. I don't know. I don't really know. What do I know? I
Yeah.
don't trust anybody. So
I
authoritative
get
figures
that.
are not my friends.
I totally get that. I just like figure, yeah, we're
Yeah.
living in very interesting, tenuous times, I feel like. And don't know who's pulling the strings necessarily, but um, I don't know. I try not to get too, what's the word, like conspiracy ish or whatever, but it doesn't feel safe. It doesn't feel safe for a
No,
good
and it doesn't matter
cause.
what you, yeah, it doesn't matter what you call it, and it doesn't
Mhm.
matter if you can name it or not. It just isn't. We know it's wrong. We know something is
Yeah.
going on, and we know whatever you call it and whatever we think it might be, it doesn't really matter.
Mm-mm.
Like, you can't, it doesn't matter at this point, because ultimately what it has transpired into is just full-blown hatred
Yeah.
and just a dysfunctionality in our society of we don't empathize.
Yeah. That's and I love that we're getting back around to that. Because like seriously, that once we start empathizing with other people, that changes everything. It's just
Changes the
like,
game.
like that's something I play with a lot in my life, especially now that I'm in my 40s, and especially now that uh you know, some people know who I am, and so it's like, what do I do with that presence, you know? Like, my in the past, I was scared, and to be safe, I kind of rendered myself a little bit nondescript.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, everything from like no labels or anything like that, no culturally defining clothing, no, you know, and often just kind of androgynous, and um, I think that's kind of how I'm wired anyway too. I just never thought about it as much. You know, I see old pictures and stuff, and I'm like, there's a certain kind of fluidity there, but also at some point androgyny more and more. You know, kind of utilitarian, black on black,
Mm-hmm.
just really easy, just not wanting to be noticed, you know. And a lot of people see that as like, oh, why do you want to be a wallflower, blah blah blah, you're so pretty and all this other stuff. But the thing is like all of those things, like brownness, queerness, prettiness, whatever the fuck, it like
Dangerous.
causes issues. It causes
Dangerous and revolutionary. Yeah.
and I definitely saw that part of it, but no one ever educated me until to learn how to wield those things,
Mm-hmm.
is something else. It's still dangerous, but it can also make changes towards the
Mm-hmm.
kinds of things that you want to see in the world. And I do wish I would have gotten those messages sooner. Like, I'm thinking for some reason right now of Beyonce's Homecoming, which I haven't
Right.
watched the whole thing of, because
Oh, you
for
should.
me, I know I will. I
You should.
intend
Yeah.
to, but I'm still holding on to her catwalk. That catwalk at the beginning when she walks out there, and I'm just like, I've watched it so many times, and I'm like, this is fucking empowering for me. Like, I don't know how many hours she spent doing this catwalk, but it was absolutely perfect. It's absolutely sexy.
I
She
like
has
to
these
imagine that she just
big,
does that.
she just
I
you
like to
practice that shit.
imagine that she
Yeah.
just does this. She's just naturally that woman.
But like, that moment for me, seeing this beautiful, you know, black woman with like, you know, who kind of like actually kind of looks like me. Like, you know, she has relaxed hair and she has lighter skin and stuff, and she is doing this amazing catwalk, and she's curvy, and I think she might even have a little extra than usual in that. And
In what she does, yeah.
yeah,
I think
and I'm
it
just
wasn't far after
after
her
yeah.
last pregnancy, I think.
Yeah. And I just like, if I had saw that when I was 12, if I'd seen that when I was 12 or 17 or whatever, you know, like those things weren't being shown. It was like there was a lot of exploitative um sexuality. So like just about every mixed black person, girl,
Mm-hmm.
whatever you saw, even men, like we think of LL Cool J's lips, you know what I'm saying? So like
Mm-hmm.
we're all sexualized, and I definitely
Mm-hmm.
got that message. But here we have someone like Beyonce who's like fucking owning it, like, and just like
Well, that's
slaying.
the interesting thing. Again, we're at this time in history, right? Like,
Mhm.
where black women are starting to have a voice, you
Mhm.
know, and black women are coming out and standing up and being like, no, I'm not your fetish.
Right,
You know, I'm not here to make you feel better about your life.
right.
I am here because I am a human being and I have this space around me and it's mine,
Yeah.
you
And
know,
I
and
also
that's
felt like those
something.
I felt
Go ahead.
like those guys were there for me too. Like I said,
Yeah.
like I know I'm like, I don't feel like I'm fetishizing it. I'm just like, whoa, like I saw
It's
myself
not the
there,
same.
you
Yeah,
know?
yeah, yeah. It's
Yeah,
not the same as, you know, it's not the same as like a white man fetishizing this thick black girl, right?
right,
Like it's not like
right,
that. It's very different. It's very much like, you know, a reflection of who you are.
right.
You know, like when I think about like the the people that I grew up thinking of as heroes, right? I've been a photographer my whole life. My mother was a photographer. She gave me a camera at 3. It was a way to keep me out of her hair, but still keep me close, you
Yeah,
know? And then when I'd wake up in the middle of the night crying or having a fit or whatever, she would just drag me into the dark room and we would start making pictures.
That's so cool.
We would just start making these images. But when I think about like my heroes, the people who I watched when I was growing up, and the people who I always wanted to emulate, and whose art I really fell in love with, was all male. It was all
Mm.
men. I didn't have any female heroes until I was an adult woman, and it's not that they didn't exist, it's that I didn't have access to that knowledge, so I had to take what I could get, and none of that really reflected the way that I saw the world, because even though I am a more masculine woman, I'm still a woman.
Mm-hmm.
I still have female experiences that I've gone through. I still have, a view of the world that is different than these men, like, um, Hugh Hefner was a huge motivating force for me in a lot of ways. Because holy hell, he moved to New York with less than $1,000 and started a magazine that became what it became. You know what I mean? Like it's an incredible like story.
Yeah.
And yes, he exploited, and yes, there was sex trafficking, and yes, there was prostitution, and you can name all the terrible things that went into it because that's how he created that. Um, but I wasn't allowed to focus on that because I didn't have anything else to focus to like look to.
Right.
So, I had to look to the positive parts of what he did. And I didn't, while I knew about all the other stuff that I would later grow into despising,
Right.
instead of it just being on the peripheral edge of my life, I didn't have the opportunity to do anything but separate the man from his art.
Right.
Like that's the only way I knew how to learn from what he had done. And that's, Picasso is another one who
Oh
I
yeah.
find
Yeah.
intensely fascinating. Even like, like I honestly, and this is a super controversial opinion, I honestly am not a huge fan of Picasso. And I
Oh.
never really have been.
Yeah.
I understand his work. I appreciate his work. I understand where it falls in the spectrum of,
Mhm.
where we are now as artists and where we
Yeah.
came from. And I just don't really like it. It's not really my thing. Um, but he lived a very intentionally independent life at the cost of women and friends and
Right. Okay.
everything else. But the intentionally independent life is something that I always loved. Like, I always was like, you know, this is a man who took everything he could that he needed
Mm-hmm.
to become the person he needed to become, to make himself what he wanted to become, which was exactly what he was. He wanted to become a famous artist,
Mm-hmm.
in modern history. And he
Right.
became a famous artist in modern history while he was still alive,
I was still alive, and we're still
you
talking about.
know,
Yep.
and we're still talking about him,
What?
so that's kind of, and now I feel like we're in such an interesting time where like, like for you, your 12-year-old inner brain was like, oh my God, Beyonce is me,
Yeah.
and we need that.
Yeah.
We need that. We need to be able to look at a reflection of ourselves to know what we are actually capable of doing
In every stage of our life.
in every stage of our lives
Yeah.
and in every aspect of our lives, in from how we love to how we create to how we work,
Yeah.
like it matters,
And
you know?
two things like I'm thinking of here is like, um, you know, like realizing these things now, like, it's dangerous. It's more dangerous now for me to be nondescript
Hmm.
because, I have nieces and nephews and
Hmm.
I have
You have to
siblings.
be.
And yeah,
Yeah.
I feel even though I don't get to spend a lot of time with them, it's just like, or my baby cousin, who came out to me when I went and visited, and that I was like, oh shit, you're like confiding in me about something. And so or my communities, the communities I work in, I was just like, I need to be about what I'm about and not hide it anymore, and I don't want to hide it anymore. And you know, so nondescript, it doesn't really serve anymore. And then the other thing I was thinking
So
of too,
go ahead.
well, it's just like, I like that you bring up Picasso and Hugh Hefner, you know, and it could be Prince and it could be Michael Jackson and it could be like so many different kinds of people. You know, Sherman Alexie, like folks have done some real fucked up shit, and it's really easy to just dismiss everything they've done because of the terribleness. And that's something that I'm like coming to terms with a lot. Yes, hold us accountable, hold everyone accountable, absolutely, and figure out ways for that healing to occur, or you know, pain, you know, however to bring back the balance. But we can't throw the baby out with the bathwater, you know.
Right,
we
right.
can't we can't deny that Picasso like absolutely affected the world of art and that whole
You
conversation.
can't deny that Bill Cosby helped raise
Mm-hmm.
half of America who
Yeah.
are all in their 40s now. You know, you
Real
can't,
talk.
like, you can't deny that. It
Yeah.
happened. You know, yes, he was a sleazy whatever. And yes, there were all kinds of issues, you know, and I remember moments like, I remember sitting on my couch in the early 90s or so with my mom, and one of the women about Cosby had come out at that point. I
Mhm.
can't remember what year it was. It was, I want to say 91, 92. It may have been 95 ish. Anyway, one of these women came out, and I was sitting there on the couch with my mom watching the news about this, and she was, she had made her name known. She was like, she was really coming forward. And I remember my mother looking at the TV, nodding her head and going, "What a horror."
Wow, that happens
And I
so
was
much.
like,
Yeah.
and I just like stepped back and I was like, I understand because Bill Cosby helped raise me too. But if some woman's coming out claiming that he raped her, maybe we should listen to her story.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, maybe there's
This
a reason
happens.
she, like, why would you come out in the 90s for that?
Right.
You
Right.
know you're going to get shredded.
Right.
We all know what the court system was doing in the
Yeah.
90s to rape victims.
Well,
You
still,
know, they're not
it's
far from
still
it
happening.
now. Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly. We're
this is
not
still
far
happening.
from it now. You
Yeah.
know, but at the same time, like, you can't refute that this man had a genius in him
Hmm.
to create some really magnificent things,
Yeah. And
you
then
know.
we have to have bigger conversations, you know, like, you know,
But we
what?
also have to stop like memorializing people who have no decent redeeming qualities. You know what I mean? Like, we need to stop like
Serial
putting R. Kelly
killers.
up on a serial killers, R. Kelly,
Yeah.
Epstein. Epstein was never actually rich. Epstein was living off of everybody else's money because they made him rich. Like, they pumped all of this money through him, you know, like, and they gave him power. We have to stop giving these people power. Like, we
I
have to recognize these things early, or
I agree
earlier
that.
at least.
And I also feel that like on a society level, we have to look at like, you know, what are the things that are creating these these kind of tendencies. Like, well, I feel like we're not there, and so we're where we're at, and so it's like I think the being out for blood thing has to happen. And because that's where we're at.
I
um
mean, I'm a burn it all
but
down, just let it start fresh kind of girl. So like,
I'm trying really hard not to be like that, but yeah, Kali keeps coming up. Because you know her story, right? She's just like, well, I guess we're starting over. Okay, you can't act right.
yeah, yeah.
Um, Cut it all. And it definitely feels like that more and more. It's just like there's something that happened at some point that it's like a boil, you know, like a, you know, when the skin just heals over the thing and it's still always there and it
Mm-hmm.
just doesn't, and it's
Doesn't
just
ever fully heal. Yeah,
a problem.
that's
Yeah.
exactly where we are. That's
And
exactly
so
where we are.
I heard that from a teacher once. I've done a lot of woo woo meditation shit, and like
Yeah.
I walked away from this a whole practice because of this, because I didn't want to believe it. I wanted to believe that everything can be healed. And this teacher said sometimes you just have to cut the cancer out. And it was the most violent thing I'd ever heard them say.
Yeah,
Um,
but she's right.
and
Or they were right.
and yeah, I didn't disagree, but I didn't want to accept it, and I'm still having a hard time accepting it. And even,
It's really difficult. I mean, I told you before we started this, I mentioned that a person from my past had reached out and was incredibly self-centered all the
mhm,
time, right? So like
mhm,
I wanted to get rid of this person. And I tried to be really kind and really nice about it. And I tried for
mhm,
a long time to be really kind and nice about it.
mhm.
At a certain point, I had to stop making room for people who decided they didn't care about my boundaries
Yep.
and didn't respect that. And so my final statement to this person, to some people, came across as pretty harsh. But in my opinion, like if you decide that it's okay after I've been kind to you and said, hey, this is something I don't really want, can you please
Yeah.
not do this? It's really
Yeah.
disrespectful to me. I'm uncomfortable with it, whatever the thing is. Um, and you decide to leap over those boundaries, I don't need to be nice anymore.
Yeah.
And we have a whole world of people who don't understand boundaries,
Mhm.
and if you don't nip it in the bud quick,
It becomes a
then
big
you end up being taken advantage of. It becomes a festering wound. It doesn't ever go away. One of the people who said I was really mean is a person who puts up with a lot of crap. One of the people who said it was fine is somebody who doesn't put up with any. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? Like
Like trying to find that place in between.
it's trying to find
I
the happy medium, but
Yeah.
I don't have to be nice if I know I need to get rid of you,
Right. I've
because
definitely
I don't care what you think about me ultimately. I care that you're gone.
I've
It's that
definitely
simple.
experienced something similar where it's just like, you can care about someone so much, and it could be family, it could be friends, it could be so many different kinds of people, students, clients, on and on. And like,
Mhm.
um, you know, boundaries are there to protect everyone. And, and it also us to, I don't know, just be able to thrive a little better. And they definitely should be respected. So I'm
Mhm.
I'm always trying to check in with folks, because I'm sure there are times when I am, pushing against the boundary. I think I definitely have that tendency, because I want to know the answer and I want to know it now. Um, so that's been a big lesson in my life, but I've definitely had experience with it where it's just like over and over and over again, soft boundary, little tiny harder, timed boundary, and then all of a sudden like, okay, no, absolutely not,
Done. Yeah.
done. I'm like, and sometimes it even involves creating a boundary with certain communities in order to have a proper boundary between just even one person. And that stuff's
Mhm.
very, very difficult, especially in a world where we need each other. Um,
Yeah.
I feel like we need each other. And um, at the same time, we also need to be able to stand on our own 2 feet and be strong and healthy. And so I'm always like, I'm weighing that balance, especially now, because I want to be able to give. And sometimes what I can give is very limited. And often I feel very guilty about that. But it's just,
No, 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 no,
have
no,
to,
no. Don't you can't feel guilty about that, because the reality is, like, we only have so much.
yeah,
We are only, there is only so much energy that we can pull from, right? To be
right.
able to do anything.
And willpower is
So
limited, is what people don't realize. It's
exactly.
limited.
And the older we get, the more we realize how important that is.
Mm-hmm.
Like I always bring it back to activism, right? Okay, so I started as a letter writer because I was a kiddo and putting me in the street was a bad idea. Um, but from like 16 to like my late 20s, early 30s,
Mm-hmm.
I spent all that time in the street.
Mhm.
carrying signs, getting petitions signed, yelling, screaming, taking pictures, whatever it was
Yeah.
I could do, right? And, but at a certain point, you age out of being tear gassed, right? Like, I can't do that in my life anymore. I
Right.
don't have that kind of energy anymore. Now, what I can do is I can organize.
Yeah.
Now I can start calling my friends, and I can get them to call their friends, and I can start a letter writing campaign and not just a letter.
Yeah.
And I can do all of these other things, but I have to be wildly aware of where I am in my life to be able to know what I'm capable of doing. Like, I can't get arrested right now. My
Right.
body would ache after a night in jail at this point,
Uh,
but back in the day when I was 20, not a problem. Like, I could sit in jail for however long you needed me to,
yeah.
whatever that meant. And so it's I think that this is just like everything else, right? We are at a point in our lives, here we are in our early mid 30s, or I mean our early mid 40s. um God, I wish 10 years younger. I want
Real
that
talk.
energy back. I like my brain now better, but I like the energy better then. um,
I
uh,
agree.
you know, but now here we are, and we have different responsibilities because we are different people, and we have more knowledge now and less physicality now. And, so we have to like readjust and figure out, okay, so what's going to work for me?
Mhm.
Is it going to be okay if am I going to be able to justify it to myself to not be in the street? Well, okay, yes, I can, but I can only justify it to myself by not being in the street if I'm doing something different. So
Mhm.
what do people like me do when you can't get in the street? Oh, this is what I do. I start making these calls. I start doing this. I start refocusing that energy, and COVID has given us this really interesting moment in history where those of us who are not starving and dying in the streets actually have the chance to reevaluate who we are and what we actually need versus what we consume.
Right.
You know,
And
um,
also, I mean, for me, it's just realizing all the abundance that's been in my life, that I didn't have time to pay attention to before because I was definitely on the gerbil wheel, for real. Like,
you were holding down like 5 jobs at one point, weren't
I
you?
mean, I kind of still am, but because that's what happens when you're a fucking freelancer. So,
Yeah, yeah,
you know, um, it's just like you take them as you take them as they come, and
yeah, yeah.
it's hard to say no when they're coming.
It is.
Because you know what the dry spot looks like. But
Yep.
so it's just like, yeah, I just never had it. So like this last 5 months, I've had a chance to be like, wow, there's truly abundance. There are lots of amazing people in my life who care about me, and like, definitely not food starved, not like, or food poor, and like just, with
Have a
just
roof, have
noticing,
clothes,
yeah,
are
and
able to
just
shower when you
noticing.
need to, just simple
Mhm.
things.
And I was just
Yeah.
noticing when things were coming in, and how, and then where the abundance was and where I could share. And then also things that I needed work on, like I need to pay more attention to my health, for example,
Yeah.
because I've been ignoring that. And just like, all kinds of other things that I put myself aside for. It's just like, this is where I have abundance. This is where I need to build more foundation. Um, and so that for me has been really, and it has helped me to see like what are the things that I have time for? What are the things I want to make time for? Am I keeping my promises to myself? Because
Mhm.
now that I have this space, I need to think about that while I have the time, so that when I don't have the time, I can be like, okay, like,
You're
there are all
already
these,
naturally there.
yeah,
Yeah.
there are all these things that I need to be doing, and I also need to be taking care of myself, because
Well, and that's kind of the beauty of what's happening is we're kind of, if you are able to be in this position where you can like
mhm,
realize that, we are actually creating new habits.
yeah,
You know, if it becomes habitual to take care of yourself, you just
mhm,
will.
It's like,
You know,
I don't
like,
need to eat Chipotle all the time, you know? I can cook up that fucking
yeah.
eggplant from the garden that my friends helped me build. And that has been like the biggest gift to me is like this garden. You kind of know the story of this. It's just like I asked for indoor low light plants that you can grow in a basement, and then people
Hmm.
started showing up with, "Here's a tomato plant. Here are these
Hmm.
special heirloom seeds," and I'm like, "What? This is a job. What are you doing to me?" And now I'm
It is
starting
a
to
job,
harvest. Yeah, now I'm
but
starting
it's a
to
great
harvest.
job.
It is a really great job because it's just like I did definitely have this feeling of like, especially at the beginning of this, is like I need to be planting things. I need to stick my hands in the dirt. I need my feet ankle deep in the dirt. Like I just want to see if things will grow. Like everything is like so doom and gloom, and like we don't know if we're going to be here, and you know, everything is just so terrible. I just want to know if these garlics will sprout. You know, I just want to know if
Yeah.
I want to know if I can get tomatoes from this cute little sprout, etc. You know, I want to know if I can save the seeds off of this corn. So that's what I've been trying to focus on, and I was literally growing everything. Like I found yucca seeds on the sidewalk and sprouted one. They grow so
Nice.
slow.
They do.
They so slow. And then like, you know, the garlic chives and everything, just like carrot carrot plants from the little carrot nubs. And I mean, because that's where I started, and then people started
Yeah.
bringing me the real thing, and I'm like, oh shit, what
Yeah.
do I do though? What do I do with this? Like, um,
It's, but I mean, but at the same time, like what was really interesting about you starting that, um, because you and I get to bump into each other once in a while, but we don't really get to spend, I think, as much time together as either of us would like if we could.
yeah.
Um, but so we keep an eye on each other. We've kind of always got an eye on each other, seeing where the other ones do, what the other one's doing, and going through and whatever.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I had really been watching with you is you were kind of starting to have this, you were having a moment before everything shut down where you were realizing maybe I don't need to be as crazy as I am.
Yeah.
And but you couldn't really honor it the way that it needed to be honored because you were still really busy. Um,
Yeah. And
and
I'm
I
in that
kept,
space again.
right, but, but you now have a garden.
Hmm.
And when you are hands deep, ankle deep in that garden, that's what you're focused on. That's
Yeah.
where your energy is. That's what you're thinking about. That is because it is so consuming,
Hmm.
and I remember thinking, God, this girl she just needs a garden. She just needs to put her hand in the dirt and like feel it and know that like we are still ultimately just a part of everything else,
Yeah.
and it does soothe the mind and it does settle the brain. And you know as stupid as it sounds, hugging a tree actually grounds you.
I've done that so many
Like
times. Yeah.
these things actually ground you and actually bring you back to being inside your body, inside that moment, inside right there, and so I'm so grateful that you were able to get those gifts and for
Yeah.
everybody to kind of come together and help you create this really special magical place in your yard
Well,
that is just for your sanity.
well, and here's the cool thing too, right? Like you helped me with this back in March. So like I'll just show everyone this cyanotype variation thing, which is your fault. Because I like take a lot of pictures of like, you know, just plants on my walks and stuff like that. And you noticed something about that. And at the time I had gone back to Starbucks and I was having anxiety attacks all the time. George Floyd happened.
Mhm.
All these really gnarly, you know, things. And so what would happen is on my way home from work, I'd collect weeds. Um,
Mhm.
and you had sent me this wonderful cyanotype paper. So I definitely burned through that first pack I bought I bought 3 more packs because the way I have to go about it now, it's going to be different. But literally, this was a grounding thing I did. I would pick flowers and weeds on my way home, and it was burning hot in the sun, and I would do like 5, 6, 8 cyanotypes in a row, just to see what would happen, and then I would go take a nap. Because and so that's kind of where all this plant gardening stuff started, is just like I've been kind of obsessed with plants for a while, and then you kind of gave me this project to do that was like super grounding, and it also made something really, really beautiful.
I'm so excited you took to that stuff the way you did. Like when I sent it to you, I was like, I feel like this is the right material for this moment, but like she might see it and be like, whatevs, and like put it in a drawer somewhere and like forget it
Oh,
exists.
I
So
definitely back to
I
it.
was
Yeah.
so excited. Yeah, I was so excited that you enjoyed it as much as you did. Like I because I feel like that's the direction you are always kind of going. You uh because you have been hired to do your actual work,
Hmm.
like you have actually been paid to write. Like
Sometimes.
I don't get paid very often to shoot, which is
Hmm.
why I assist so much, because I
Yeah.
get paid pretty well to assist and to
Okay.
be like the secondary bounce off person. But I don't get paid to shoot, and because I don't get paid to shoot, I don't have to have any specific direction. I don't
Hmm.
have to have any other thread other than myself
Hmm.
involved in anything that I do. You have kind of trained yourself, been trained, depending on how you look at getting jobs, um, to give yourself more of a focus and to give yourself more of like a thread to get things through, to get yourself through your process, whatever that may be. And I knew that this was kind of outside of your wheelhouse, but sort of exactly in your wheelhouse,
Yeah, I want to
you
thank
know?
you again for that, because like it was also very generous. I think a lot of people who are, very much whatever their art is, sometimes people get a little protective over it.
There's room for all of us.
Yeah, I think so too. I think there's room for all of us. And sometimes I get a little nervous, but I'm like, no, no, no. Walk your talk, man. Like there is room
Yeah,
for all of
yeah.
us. Yeah.
That's one of the reasons, that's one of the biggest pivotal things about, make bad art.
Mm-hmm.
Make bad art. Who cares? Make it. It doesn't matter. Just keep making art. Keep doing what you're doing, whatever that is. Don't be afraid. It's not about that. It's not about sharing it with the world and other people's judgments.
Right,
It's about personal therapy.
right.
Make the work that makes you feel better about existing.
Yeah.
Because we live, even if you take away COVID, let's take away the pandemic and go back to life in last October. Let's go back to last October, right? A year from, basically. Even at that point, like I feel like what am I trying to say? I feel like we're not honoring ourselves in the correct ways necessarily.
Mm.
And I feel like we're not, we're greedy by nature. Human beings, human beasts are greedy as hell by nature. We have, because of our greed, inflicted a lot of really dark things on this planet, right? So you take away the COVID, you take away the disease, we still have all these other like enormous problems, right? And these enormous issues that, we're becoming bigger and bigger and bigger because we were so busy we couldn't take care of them, we couldn't handle it, and I feel like once you put everything on pause and you give people an opportunity to really focus on the things that they would be focusing on if they
Yeah.
weren't just trying to eat every day,
Right. So
you
many
know
aspects.
we are actually like critical thinkers. We are actually empathetic creatures. We do actually care about each other.
Yep.
We just don't know how to do that when we're busy trying to consume everything.
Yeah.
You know,
I think it's a setup, but
I,
you know,
yeah,
and people
I
are
mean,
pushing really hard to go back to the setup, and
they really are.
and
And,
maybe it
but
doesn't serve
that's the
anyone.
thing. So many of us can't.
Right.
I can't go back to the way that was.
I kind of can't either. Like
I
even
love, like, don't get me wrong. I love my job. I love what I do.
yeah,
I cannot work the way I was working before this happened
yeah,
and be okay with who I am as a person
right.
at the same time. You know, I can't do that. It's just not in me. Something that stuck with me, something that has stuck with me forever, and now it's become even more useful. Many years ago, I heard an interview with Fran Lebowitz,
Mm-hmm.
who I adore. I'm sure there's terrible things wrong with her. I don't care. I love her. She's a very no bullshit kind of lady, and I appreciate everything about that. She said that when she moved to New York, she started driving cabs. Before she became a writer, she wanted to be a writer, right? Before she
Okay.
became a writer, she wanted to be a writer. So,
Yeah.
so she moved to New York because she knew that's, you know, she, during the 70s, when New York was like the epicenter for that kind of art, weird thing that was going on there, you know, art, rock and roll nonsense in the middle of turmoil. She decided she, you know, she was going to move to New York, and she needed to find a job, and she couldn't stand doing most things because Fran still doesn't really like that many people. So she started driving cabs, and she would work. When you rent a cab, when you are driving cabs, you're actually renting the cab by the day.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like renting a booth at a hair salon, right? So you pay this fee for the day. So you actually have to make a certain amount to at least pay the fee for renting the cab, but then above and beyond to make any profit, right?
Yeah.
So she would drive cabs. She figured out exactly how much money she needed, how much food she ate, what her rent was, what kind of, you know, things she consumed, cigarettes, booze, drugs, whatever the thing was of her choice at that moment.
Mm-hmm.
She figured it out. She figured it all out exactly to the penny.
Mm.
And she worked driving cabs until she made that amount of money.
Mm-hmm.
And then she took the rest of the week and did writing, just wrote, did whatever she needed to do to make herself a better writer,
Yeah.
whether it be educate or write or wander around New York and gain inspiration, whatever that was. You know, she only worked exactly the amount she had to work and nothing more, because she was busy doing something better.
Yeah.
You know, and that has stuck with me so much through my life that I just want to be that person. I just want to work as much as I absolutely need to work so that I can do the things that I love to do.
Yeah.
You know, and I fell in love with my job last year in a way that I didn't anticipate. And so it kind of pushed all that other stuff to the side, and I ended up working all this time. And, you know, I don't have kids. I don't have that kind of family, but like, I miss my cat. I miss my boyfriend. I miss my pillow. I miss my
Mm-hmm.
garden. You know what I mean? Like, I didn't have
Yeah.
time to have a garden last year, and that was devastating to me in a way I didn't think
Yeah.
it would be.
I'm feeling
You know, I
some
just figured, yeah.
about whether or not I'll be able to do this next season, because it's been so wonderful, and like I learned a lot of valuable lessons that I can apply, you know what I mean, and be better prepared. So
For everything.
yeah, for
Like
everything.
gardens are metaphors. I mean, if you take away the actual garden itself, gardens are metaphors for growth and
Yeah.
transition and transformation and,
And attention
you know,
and
I mean,
presence.
yeah,
Yeah.
you know, as a writer, like, you use all kinds of interesting metaphors that relate back to growing plants, you know, and it all comes back to growth in you and you know what that looks like, you know. So I think, you know, I think it's, I can't recommend enough to make sure that you have time,
Yeah, that's, I mean,
you
that's
know.
my goal. I'm like really adamant about like a couple times this week someone has asked me, but do you have time though? You know, do you have time to come to my backyard or whatever, you know, whatever it is.
Right.
no, I'm telling you, I'm making time because
Right.
I'm going to be busy no matter what. And also for my mental health, I need to be around the people I care about as much as possible. Even if it's just like 40 minutes, whatever, like let's make
Yeah,
it.
yeah.
And that's one thing that I'm definitely carrying out of this pandemic is just like letting the people I know, the people I super care about as much as possible. I mean, there's so damn many people I love, right? And
Yeah.
so I feel like I'm not making it to all of them, but I'm trying my damn best. And hopefully the people I care about know. And then, and there's some that are harder. Like there's some people I don't really want to spend a lot of time with, but I know they're having a hard time, and I don't want them to feel like no one gives a shit. And so I'm trying to make sure that is a priority. Because I've definitely been in a lot of places in my life where I felt abandoned or, no one gave a shit.
Hmm.
Um,
Hmm.
and that is definitely a place where I can share a little bit. Not always a lot, but like I'm trying.
Well, and you don't always need to share a lot, I mean, because
Yeah.
ultimately it's got to be therapeutic for you as well as them, right? So if you step into a situation that you're not really
Yeah.
into, you know what I mean? Like it's gonna wear on the
Yeah.
people that you're trying to relieve,
Yeah, and that's what I'm realizing too. It's like there are
you
lots of
know?
places I feel more obligation about, and it's like it's not as important as like what I don't. It's complicated. It's always complicated because there are so many different levels. I know people, um and I just want to, as best as I can, with whatever capacity I have, showing people I give a shit. You know. Um.
It's yeah. I mean, honestly, it's all we can do.
Yeah.
Whatever, whether it be we show them because we're feeding them or we show them because we're hugging them. Like it's all the same.
Yeah.
It's all, you know, removing stigmas and removing awkwardness and removing discomfort and just allowing each other space and giving each other space to be whatever it is that we need to be,
Right. Yeah.
whatever that is at the time. I feel incredibly gifted and fortunate in the sense that I have, before anything was anything, I kind of removed my family from my life a long time ago, or I removed myself from my family's lives a long time ago, depending on how you look at that. Um, and by by forcing that, I kind of also had to realize that I need family, even though not necessarily those people, but I do need family. I still need people
Yes.
close to me. I still need affection and attention and somebody to hear me when I'm crying, and
Yeah.
you know what I mean, somebody to hold my hand when I'm nervous, and I
And
still
it's
need all of those things. So I've had to create
yep.
these families, and I've created a lot of really close relationships in my life
Yeah.
because of that, because I've been able to make space for these people in my life, and they have, God, thank God, these people have made space for me in theirs, you
Yeah.
know? And so when all of this went down, and obviously depression skyrocketed, and there has been a lot more suicide now, a lot of loneliness, a lot of people not really being able to tap into whatever support system that they've tried to create, or
Mhm.
maybe you didn't try to create it because it wasn't an important issue until suddenly you realized it was an important issue.
Right.
I feel super gifted in the fact that I have a really amazing support system. So like I once a week or so make a round of phone calls and check on people and listen to them and hear them. And then there are other people in my circle who do the same thing, but
That's
I'm on
awesome.
their round,
Yeah.
and I'm the one that's getting the call and checked in on and making sure I'm still eating and have a roof over my head and I'm not freaking out. So it's like, we've been really fortunate in the sense that we have kind of come together in a way of supporting each other that we had already kind of started fostering.
Right.
We already kind of loved each other. We already kind of knew that, each of our weaknesses and what we needed and where we needed love and affection and how to make that work. And I used to kind of make the comment that friendship is just people using each other and being okay with it, which is not necessarily a hard fast rule,
Right.
but ultimately that's what it is, right? Like, I love you, you love me, we have a bond, now I need help. I don't know, who else am I going to call? Like, who else am I going to reach out to when I need help? Who else are you going to reach out to when you need help? You're going to go to those people, and those people who you've built that bond with, and they're going to be okay with you coming to them because they too need you. Like, it's a cooperative way of thinking without, but as soon as you make people realize they're actually using each other, they don't like it, and they tend to throw that out of their brains. But really, I mean, ultimately that's all we're doing, right? Like, we're all just reaching out in the world and going, I need help with, hanging out today, doing my garden today, my head is falling apart, like, whatever that thing is, I need help. And so I'm reaching out to you for that, and however you step up for that, I'm gonna use it, I'm gonna take it, and I'm gonna do my best to make me better, so that when you call me for that same thing, I have it to give you.
Right.
So that you can use me just as much, and I kind of try to work on that premise. I try to kind of work on that idea that, like, my responsibility is to, if somebody says they need, I have to figure out, even if it's not me supplying the thing, I have to figure out how to connect them to that need. Because if you came to me because you counted on me to do it. People don't, like, I'm not really that nice of a person. So people don't really come to me for, like, oh, she's going to be super sympathetic, she's going to be like, I'm not. I don't, like, I'm really empathetic, but that doesn't necessarily mean I'm being empathetic.
Right.
Sometimes that means I am not tearing your head off and I'm walking away.
Ah.
Because I empathize that you need to do whatever.
Yeah.
I also empathize with myself, and I know that I can't do whatever with you.
That's definitely an important stance, is to know what we can handle and what we can give and what our capacities are. And so, like, we have to constantly be querying, ourselves, I feel like, and a lot of us don't do that. Definitely makes us all better. I was like, well, I can't handle other resources for that, but this is what I can do. Like,
right.
Or, it
I
can
mean,
look so many different kinds of ways.
think about how many people in your life you're friends with. Now think about how many people in your life think they're friends with you. And that's an even bigger number, right? So all of these people now are resources for you.
And I still struggle with that, for sure.
It's a hard thing. It's a really hard thing, especially because we are so trained in this idea that we can pull ourselves up by our bootstraps.
Yeah.
I have yet to meet anybody who's ever actually done that.
Yeah, that myth of not just meritocracy, but also individualism in relation to meritocracy. I've definitely bought into that for the bulk of my life.
People do. It's what we're raised with.
Yep.
Citizenship grades when you're in kindergarten, that's all that is.
Yeah.
That's indoctrinating you into that thought. And it continues our whole lives. And it takes us to see it and then shake ourselves out of it to be able to do something different, which creates, the people who everyone else looks at and they're like, oh, you don't understand. Once you're older, you'll get it. You'll become more conservative when you get older. You'll become more blah, blah.
I've heard that
whatever.
A lot. I'm like,
of course.
Yeah.
I heard that a lot too. And turns out when I was 16, I wanted to burn down the system slightly less than I do now.
Right?
Because
it's starting to look like that's the only answer.
Exactly. Turns out it didn't change. It just got more intense.
Yeah. And
but it didn't go away.
So
yeah.
but I
you
gotta close
know?
this up pretty
Yeah,
soon, because I have another
we
call.
should.
But I want to make sure we know how to, I don't know, keep in contact with your work and support it when it becomes available. Yeah.
So my Instagram account is Natja Soave Photos. No hyphens, no anything. NatjaSoavePhotos. It's all black and white mostly. Again, therapy for depression. So that kind of works out in my favor. I am keeping most of my work updated on that on a semi-regular basis. And as other projects grow, particularly as this family history project that I'm working on grows, there will be more information through Insta on that. Um, it's again a pretty slow process because we're just getting started.
Yeah.
But I've got a really phenomenal crew of people helping me out with this, and some really great artists who I will also in various ways have links to for other people to check out as well, because they're amazing people. Um, so yeah, so that's kind of the only consistent source of my work at the moment, um, because most of it is doing a lot of writing
Yeah.
and trying to figure out that, I think I used to be decent at writing and I stopped for a long time, and now I'm trying to relearn how to be decent at writing again. I feel like I
It's
used to
still
have a
there.
much bigger vocabulary. It's just I haven't used it in a really long time.
I
So,
can dig that.
you know,
It's still there. You just need to like finesse it a little bit. It'll come back.
yeah, shine it up. It'll be
Yeah.
fine.
I know.
I've just worked so hard on my visual language that I haven't worked as hard on my actual language. Like, so, so yeah, that's your closest connection to me at the moment. And as things progress, I will announce on there what's going on. There is a Facebook page floating around. Don't bother. It's not. It's not anything
I have one of
real.
those.
Yeah. Like, I started it because I had to for school, and then I realized that is not at all the format in which I want to show my work
Hmm.
or advertise it or anything. Like, that
Yeah.
is not the form. I don't want to cater to Facebook
Yeah.
in that way. Um, Instagram, even though it is all Facebook anyway, um, it's still like kind of removes me from your opinion, and I
Hmm.
like that better. It's a lot more.
Yeah. There's a little bit of a barrier there.
I like the visual language better than getting screamed at.
Yeah.
So so I kind of live more there currently. Um, but yeah, that's kind of how you access my work at the moment. And like I said, I will put more stuff together for that on that, so that people can start seeing the other progress in some of the other projects I'm working on. I also have a website, which is natjasuave.com. Same spelling, my whole name, all one word. And that has the portrait projects on there. That also has my library project on there, which I was really proud of and I really enjoyed doing. And I think now is probably more important than ever, since
Oh
we're
my gosh.
losing libraries again. Um,
Hmm.
so that's kind of been in the back of my head too. I might be doing that project again, but doing it in Denver, because we're actually starting to lose our libraries. Like, when I did it in Detroit, I did it as like the group of last standing libraries, right? Because we had lost so much funding and lost so many libraries, and lost so much of that, that I really wanted to focus on that project, because I wanted to focus on the fact that we still had some,
Yeah.
and they weren't just like, it's not just like a shh, be quiet kind of library. Like, we're Detroit. We built big concrete hardcore buildings as bomb shelters and as storm shelters. And so there are legitimate silent spaces in libraries. When you walk through the door, it's 25 kids screaming their heads off because they just got out of school and this is where they hang out until their folks can come get them. So it's like, they're such pivotal, radical, incredible spaces, and I find them incredibly important, and I think everybody should find them incredibly important.
I agree.
And librarians we need to support, because these are radical people with radical thoughts, who give us spaces to continue with whatever work we need to do. And I think that's enough of my soapbox of that.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. For me, libraries are some of the last sacred spaces, bar none.
Yeah, truly.
Absolutely. So, oh my gosh, thank you so much. And
Thank you so much. This was so good. Thank you. Thank you
yeah,
for being one of my gifts in my life. I love you
absolutely.
so
Thank you for
much. You're
being one
such
of
a
mine.
wonderful person. Like, I'm so glad that we found each other.
Me too.
Like, this was
Thank
real
you.
cool. Like, thank you.
Awesome. Well, all right. I'm
All
gonna
right.
turn the thing off.